This is something that I think I probably have known for a while, but I just made the connection relatively recently. And that is that coding is like origami. And I think we talked about this a little bit at one point, but something that I have been into for a very long time has been origami. I started doing it when I was a kid, and even up through, being an adult, I still do it. I find it enjoyable. It's fun to be able to be anywhere and be able to just make something out of whatever scrap of paper happens to be laying around. It's kind of fun. Can be an icebreaker, but it's also just something I enjoy doing. And maybe it's the geometric nature of it I find really satisfying. It's kind of cool that you start with a square, and just by making folds, no cuts, you can build something out of it. And I enjoy it in sort of a zen like way. But the connection that I would make to coding is that when you're doing origami, the initial folds that you make, or the base folds as sometimes they're called, are probably the most important ones that you can ever do. Because any mistakes there, like if the line isn't exactly lined up, they get magnified as you go further and further down into folding this thing. So if you're kind of sloppy about it and you just sort of like, it's close enough, you'll end up with something at the end that it gets harder and harder for it to fit into the more complicated thing that it needs to be. And it's going to look less and less like what it's supposed to. And you're going to have to do a lot of fiddling with it and a lot of mashing. And it's not going to turn out well. It just doesn't turn out well. And I think that's very similar to coding, because the structure that you set up initially, if you're building anything moderately complicated, really has a huge impact on what the end result is going to be.
Right.
And especially in front end development, something I see a lot is people, again, they just need to get the work done. They've got a deadline, the client wants it by such and such a time. And they end up with a solution that they're like, well, it works. It was a copy pasta from Stack Exchange, or I just duplicated this file, and you're like, it works. It's fine. We're good to go. The problem with that is similar to origami. When you are then layering things on top of that, or you have to make changes later on, you're left with a whole bunch of code debt that it just never, it's not something that is easy to work with. Again, because that initial frame that you built everything on is kind of not very precise and not very well thought out. And I just thought that was an interesting analogy, because the better you are at thinking through how you're going to solve a problem and doing it in a precise way that you can then layer everything on top of it, is very similar to when you're folding something in origami and how carefully you do the initial folds when you're building the thing. So, that was just a small observation that I made. And I always find it interesting when things that seem completely dissimilar have something in common,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's from a methodology point of view or a philosophical point of view or whatever. And that's something that I found.
Excellent. All right. I never even thought about the idea of not perfectly lining up, a fold, and then how that kind of builds up as you start to do the
Mm-hmm.
folded piece of origami. It is totally like technical debt, right? Because you're just going to make one bad
I
decision
happen
after
to have
another.
a cute little
Oh,
origami I just did right here. It's a very simple model. It's called My Favorite Fox.
that's
And it's
cute.
just a very simple representation
Yeah.
of a fox. Anyway,
So do
yeah.
you have like
Sorry.
a series of, what do they call like origami? Is it models? Is that what they call them?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have a bunch that you just do over and over that you've memorized, or do you like try to find new ones to fold, or how does that
I
work?
think at this point I have more that I forgot than I have memorized. I had a whole bunch of and some really complicated ones that I had memorized. Like there's a rose that is actually a really, really complicated. It's if you want to Google it, it's the Kawasaki rose, and it's a super complicated thing. And I had that memorized. I couldn't do it today.
Yeah.
But I do have a certain number that I have memorized that I probably will never forget. And then, if I see something that I want to do or share with the kids or something, like, yeah, there you go. There's the Kawasaki rose. Yeah.
Let's see.
And I did a whole bunch of these. I've got uh, pictures up on a site of a whole bunch of origami that I've done. Um,
Wow. That's cool. It's right here. It's this thing right here.
Let me see. I don't even know if this site is up. Oh, it is up. Okay, I'm gonna send you a super secret link that
Okay.
you can make entirely public. I don't care. And I'll put it in the chat here as well as on YouTube. And now bear in mind, these pictures and this website is super old. Very, very old. But there's a whole bunch of origami that I've done up there that you can check out. Did you get the link?
Where did you send it?
In both in the YouTube chat and then also in the Craft Quest on call chat.
Oh, I see it. Got it. Okay. Interesting domain. Let's see.
Yeah, you like that? So actually, go to there's one called Butterfly Collection. Click on that one. And again, this is super old, crappy old site. I think this is something I made as a present to my wife one year. So I used all of this really cool paper that I got from Japan, and I folded a bunch of butterflies for her. And it was she put it in like a box and mounted it on the wall.
Cool.
But if you go back, we're not going to spend too much time on these ugly old pictures, but go back and look at there are a couple of Kawasaki rose, yeah, like that lavender one, yeah, or that one, yeah, yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
I like that it's that it's up the directory structure.
I think honestly, I think this site is something that some really old software did as an export.
Yeah.
I think it might have been like a super old version of iPhoto or something like that. Yeah.
That's super cool.